funny enough, most, and there are very different reasons, work I've done for you in connection of sort of time and hours employed and such like, is all being connected with the Olympic Games. Right. Because when that tragic occasion when we won the Olympics in 2005, and the next day those bombs went off all over London when the terrorists decided to let their view know, it was one of those times when there was a huge summit on, and all the foreign broadcasters were trapped up at Glen Eagles, which is a golf course and estate in Scotland, where they'd all gone to attend a G8 or a G20 summit. So none of them were in London. The big operators in America, and I remember having an open line, via you of course, to Fox News for I think 10 hours, which was involved one or two breaks for the calls of nature, but and that was 2005. Now this year has been, you know, I was glad to say the much happier story of the Olympics having taken place, those very Olympics that led to the bombs, and this time, I mean, there's been a massive security, whether it's chicken or egg. So far, we're in the Paralympic period now, but there hasn't been any outright terrorism. So it's been a more, as I said, there's a lot of interest in the process of the story. And in a way, it was a classic sort of fairy tale in that, you know, it started with gloom and doom. Then the rains poured down, and we had the worst rainfall in Britain in 100 years in July. The place was awash with rain and with the failed companies who hadn't provided security then, plus, you know, the usual gloom sayers who don't like Olympics. Quite a lot of residents of London thought their lives were going to become miserable, and thought that they were being made to pay for them and by their taxes. So that was one period. Then we moved into the period where there was interest because they got going, and they appeared to pick up after, you know, a quite spectacular opening ceremony, which actually somehow or other did affect world enthusiasm. And there was something that in my experience rarely happens. It actually lived up to the hype.
Actually the hype was that it was going to be horrible, and then suddenly it was so spectacular. What take did you find that the clients, the foreign broadcasters, found so fascinating about this whole development of this move from doom and gloom to the ceremony? What interested them? What kind of questions were they having about the Olympics?
Well, I think it was when some of the worst fears didn't arise. The worst probably being that didn't arise was that all the immigration officers at Heathrow Airport were getting on strike on the eve of the Games, which would have left, I mean, everybody stranded in huge queues, so that didn't happen. Then, as I said, the mood set by the opening ceremony. And then when the Games got going, the excitement of the individual athletes, and the fact that, I mean, it's rather simple, really, the sun came out. And of course, there's a lot of difference. And the little hiccups that, I mean, were bound to have been magnified before there was any sport, because, you know, journalists, like everybody else, need something to do, and there were these games that weren't yet started, so, or underway properly. So when there were empty seats, which were a great embarrassment, and some scams on the tickets and such like, people picked on those, but they were sort of overtaken by the way in general, particularly the traffic infrastructure of London worked. And
it was quite amazing, wasn't it?
Yes, and these lanes, I lived in the Soviet Union when it was communist, with the ZIL lanes, which are, you know, are named after a famous Soviet-Russian car in which all the big party bosses used to travel to and from the Kremlin to their dachas in a large lane in the middle of the road, a street called Kutusovsky Prospect, which nobody else could travel in. And in London we had, this nickname was applied to the fact that lots of lanes in our traffic were created only for vehicles with Olympic passes and distinctive Olympic logos. There was a feeling there that they weren't all worthy athletes who were anyway living out in their village, but were fat cats and spongers and administrators who were just living the life of Riley and wanted to be in the centre of London at the five-star hotels in Park
Often the case around sports, isn't it?
Yes, very much the case, and a pity.
But there was one running and about 5 managing.
But even that worked. I mean, somehow or other it worked.